Good day, everyone. Welcome to Blacklogic. South Korea demands answers after U.S. detains over 300 workers in shocking conditions. Supreme Court rulings are reshaping the balance of power, giving Trump sweeping immunity and raising alarm bells about what Official Act now means. A history rewind. On September 14th of 1847, General Winfield Scott captured Mexico City, sealing the military phase of the Mexican-American War and forever redrawing the borders. And lastly, skin color, phenotype, and how it relates to IQ. We know, ladies and gentlemen, that that was all just a big fat lie because the IQ test was created by no other than. So on yesterday was, on September 4th, no less, of this year, U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement agents carried out a very massive raid at a Hyundai LG EV battery plant under construction in Georgia. We've been covering this for quite some time for the past week or so. Now, 475 people were detained, including 316 South Korean nationals. Now, many of the South Koreans workers were technical specialists, engineers, or equipment installers, they were on short-term visas. For example, the B1 business visitor visa for specialized tasks, not manual labor. So now that a lot of their countrymen have been detained and now they're already back in South Korea, the country is now checking for human right violations. The one report that I'm trying to find information for you guys, if their short-term visas expired. Now, attorney says detained Korean Hyundai workers has specialized skills for short-term jobs. And as you comb through the details, right here on the second paragraph, Atlanta immigration attorney Charles Cook, who represents 4 of the detained South Korean nationals, told the Associated Press on Monday that many were doing work that is authorized under the B1 business visa program. They had planned to be in the U.S. for just a couple of weeks and never longer than 75 days, he said. The vast majority of the individuals that were detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement were South Korean, were either there as engineers or were involved in after-sales service and installation. So as the reports and information is rolling out, I continue not to see anyone stating that their visa were valid or their visa was expired. But nonetheless, South Korea is taking an extra step by the way of the UN and basically stating a claim for human rights. Now, the only thing that can come out from this is money to South Korea. That's the only way that the world now works, is when you're being repatriated, when you're being restored in some form of reparation. So I wonder if America is going to pay reparations to Korea because of the treatment of their workers. Okay, because out of 475 of the workers detained, 316 of them were South Korean nationals, supposedly on business visas. Then Trump came out and stated that foreign workers are now welcome days after hundreds of arrests of South Koreans. U.S. president says he doesn't want to disincentivize investments after images of workers chained and handcuffed caused widespread alarm in South Korea. This is something that the president has started. Now he's retracting. Because as I stated on reports before, there was only one South Korean national who posed a valid visa. So is President Trump allowing certain groups of people from countries who have American business interests, allowing them to work in the country illegally? Is there an exception to the rule? Or are we just targeting people from Central America, the Caribbean, and Africa? That is my question, because at one point in time, we were looking at Chinese. We were looking at Eastern Europeans mostly, as well as other people from India, Central America, Caribbean, Africa. Now it seems as though people are getting waivers from the president, no less. Okay, because again, There was only one report out of 316, one who was on a valid visa. Okay, let's say what the president stated here. It says that President Trump has said foreign workers sent to the United States are welcome, and he doesn't want to frighten off investors. This is about money, and this is not about patriotism. This is not about illegal immigration anymore. This is about money. 10 days after hundreds of South Koreans were arrested at a work site in Georgia, in his post on his platform Truth Social, I don't want to frighten off or disincentivize investment. I want them to bring their people of expertise for a period of time to teach and train our people how to make these very unique and complex products as they phase out of the country and back into their land, he wrote. Okay, immigration and custom enforcement officials allege South Koreans had overstayed their visas or held permits that didn't allow them to perform manual labor, only to instruct, but they were actually conducting manual labor. What does this do to the American worker? If I can bring over Korean nationals to do the work at a Korean facility that supposedly hire American citizens, I'm pretty sure there's some sort of deal there, but they had Korean nationals who was there on a advisory role, were actually doing the work that American citizens should have been hired and paid to do. So again, was ICE justified in the detainment of 315, even though the report is 316, one had a valid visa, 315 detained? Yes, they were. Now, what President Trump is stating here is that, hey, we want them to come over here, teach American workers, and then go back home. I agree with that. But now you're speaking very contradictory when it comes to this, because now, they can come back. But wait a minute, they're not here violently. They're not here legally. They don't have a valid permit and or visa. And that's what the report's stating here. The Georgia raid was the largest single site operation conducted since Trump launched a sweeping immigration crackdown across the country. Now, my question is, why didn't ICE attack all of these farms that all of these people, mostly from Central America and Haiti, are picking fruits? Americans don't want to pick fruit. That's what people are saying, because a lot of these farms are ran by who? Majority of them are ran by white business farm owners that have hired illegal immigrants. So do we attack the illegal immigrants, or do we incarcerate the illegal farm owner for hiring illegal immigrants? I pick D, all of the above. Now, through the U.S. decided against deportation, images of the workers being chained and handcuffed during the raid caused widespread alarm in South Korea. Here's my thing. How can they go to the UN? How can they seek human rights violation when your people were in our country illegally on expired visas and permits, and you were conducting work on a advisory permit? Because this is how other countries treat America. They treat America as a stumping ground, as generation for wealth for their countries. Where you think the money that they were generated from this factory, they sell it to Americans, they sell it to America, but the workers in the factory are majority South Korean. They're going to take USD and take it back to Korea to increase the GDP of South Korea. Even though we are allies, even though we are friends, we're still being treated like dirt. And this is the reason why I thought President Trump did this mass deportation of illegal immigrants, because every time we were talking and referring to illegal immigrants, everyone was referring to people out of Mexico and Central America, even though we have hundreds of thousands of people from the Caribbean, from Africa, from China, from India, from all over the world. Even Eastern Europeans are in the country illegally, who came through by the way of the southern border. But they were only attacking certain demographics and certain races of people, certain ethnic of people. So now, which we all knew this in the beginning, that this is about money. Because he said he doesn't want to de-incentivize people who come here with investment, because Korea, by the way of Hyundai, Samsung, LG, and other Korean products, has a huge foothold in the American economy. That's what this is about, folks. So President Trump some people would like to protect some of the words he state, but we have to state the truth. It seems as though he's retracting. It seems as though he's wavering a lot of the pinpoints that the reason why a lot of the American people voted him into office. That is what I am referring to here this morning, ladies and gentlemen. I guess no one wants to cry foul when we see that our president is in the wrong. Because only one ICE worker showed a valid visa being forced into voluntary departure. Now, if anyone, that one particular South Korean national has an outcry of human violation. But altogether, South Korea was outraged, and the labor minister called the treatment shocking and said South Korea would inspect whether human rights violations occurred. And by the way, South Koreans take care of their people because they chartered a Korean air flight was sent to bring back the workers. They arrived home amid emotional reunions with condemnation in the media and the public. And the incident has raised serious concerns in Seoul about future investment about Korean firms in the U.S. given visa irregularities and how foreign workers are treated. And we look at the wider implications of this, questions about consistency and fairness in immigration enforcement, especially for skilled foreign workers who are part of a major business project like Hyundai. And the potential disruption of industrial investment and global supply chains. The plant was a big deal in the U.S., part of the EV battery build-out. Delays have already been delayed and reported. How does this affect America? How does this affect American citizens? Because you have a factory in America that you are not hiring American citizens. You're not hiring American workers. You're hiring your own. So I don't know their claim for human rights violations. I have no idea their claim to this. Now, I know you guys have been seeing this going around for quite some time because the United States Supreme Court issued a 6-3 ruling that gives President Trump a very broad immunity from criminal prosecution for acts done as part of their official duties. And Chief Justice John Roberts and the majority held that for acts done in the core constitutional powers of the presidency, things like foreign relations, command of the armed forces, pardons, enforcing laws, that President Trump has absolute immunity for the Officials Act and not in core powers. And then the president, again, the court held there is no immunity for unofficial acts outside the scope of what a president does in official capacity. And this still leaves, the conduct potentially prosecutable. Because after President Trump comes out of office, I already know there's going to be people, mostly from the Democratic side, they're going to go out of him punitively. And basically the Supreme Court stating that he can do no wrong. They have presidential and constitutional immunity from any crimes that he has done. That is what they're alluding to. I guess in layman terms, it means that many alleged wrongdoings by the president might never be litigated if the president claims there were official acts and the court agrees. And critics say that gives too much leeway for abuse of power. What counts as core constitutional power versus official versus unofficial is still murky. That means future cases will have disputes over how to apply these categories. That makes pretty much everybody in America want to be the president where you can do no wrong. Because chronologically, and we look at some of the delayed concerns by granting immunity, some proceedings are delayed or complicated that can affect not just President Trump, but any former or future president engaged in questionable official acts. Prosecutions for election-related misconduct like January 6th may be blocked or significantly narrow. And as I told you about January 6th, President Trump has, he didn't march on the Capitol, but they say he incited a riot. And as I stated many times before, January 6th was a riot Was a protest. It was all of the above. You had some genuine people there, but then you had a lot of them who wasn't genuine, who just wanted to cause destruction and mayhem. But by giving him this power, this is really going to erode checks and balances in the abuse of power for the presidency. Again, if you hold that presidency, especially now, you can do no wrong. You can absolutely do no wrong. And I want to just take you guys back here just a little bit in remembrance of the Mexican-American War that occurred September 14th, 1847. Because the Mexican-American War was triggered by U.S. annexation of Texas or Tejas and the border disputes and the U.S. expansionism. General Winfield Scott led a campaign culminating in capturing Mexico City on September 14th of 1847, effectively ending the military phase of the war. Now we have to bring in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848 that formally ended the war, and Mexico ceded over 500,000 square miles. Listen, Mexico ceded over 500,000 square miles, which was 55% of its territory, to the United States. That included large portions of present-day California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, and Oklahoma. And the cost of Mexico was immense. Loss of land, political instability, economic hardship for the U.S. It expanded its territory and reinforced ideology of manifest destiny. Manifest destiny? Of controlling and taking over a lot of the states that were once part of Mexico? And while this matters still, because we have border issues, immigration, cultural and demographic legacies that stem in part from this land transfer, indigenous and native and Latino communities, contemporary claims of grievances traced back that is in part of this war. We also have historical memory and nationalism. How the war is taught and remembered varies, often diverging sharply between U.S. and Mexican perspectives. Why do I bring this up? Because during the protests they had in California, people were stating that this is Mexico. This is indigenous land. And majority of that came from the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and possibly some of Latinos and Hispanics from Mexico and Central America not understanding the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, and how Mexico ceded over territories. Now, again, 55% of Mexico was ceded to America. California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and then parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, and Oklahoma. Let me provide more context. Now, on May 13th, 1846, the United States declared war on Mexico, beginning the Mexican-American War. The Mexican-American War is one of the least known pivotal moments in U.S. history. It paved the way for so many other important events, from the expansion and disposition of indigenous people, the California Gold Rush, the American Civil War. It added the states of California, Texas, New Mexico, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming to the United States. American success in the war solidified belief in the concept of manifest destiny, confirming the idea that the United States had been destined by divine entities to expand into a colonial, Freudian slip, a continental empire resembling the present-day nation. For proponents of slavery and abolish, the new territory provided a source of conflict over whether slavery would expand and continue in the West. For the major military leaders of the Civil War on both the Confederate and Union sides, including such pig war figures as Winfield Scott, George Pickett, and William Harney. It was a crucible in which their skills were tested, their tactics were formed, and they built the bonds of camaraderie that they relied on during the Civil War. So yes, as we come into the history of how America is roughly 55% of Mexico, and versus Mexico obtained, or their land mass encompasses 55% of America. By due to the treaty, they have ceded 55% of their land to America. Now, a lot of the figures show how much that land is worth today, because what people are not understanding here, ladies and gentlemen, is that the land that they conceded at the time, America bought this land for $16 million. And today, folks, that land is worth $600 million, supposedly. That 16 million is roughly $600 million today. So in some regards, because Mexico wanted the war to stop, they just relinquished and ceded, but for a small fee of $16 million. So they pretty much signed paperwork through this treaty, okay, that they would relinquish the land to America. So on paper, even though it was forced, these states belong to America. And this is just in remembrance of that history, okay? We're just kind of combing back the hands of time, because the celebration or the mourning of the Mexican-American War was celebrated yesterday of September 14th. A very pivotal part of American history, because again, America, 55% of it was Mexico, until Mexico ceded by the way of this treaty to relinquish the land. Again, that treaty was Guadalupe Hidalgo, and that was in 1848. Now, let's fry some bigger fish here. And what I mean by this, because for quite some time, and I've been here, the president stating, especially when he's talking to melanated people, that person is low IQ, even though the president doesn't have any reports of people being low IQ. The president is not receiving that certain iconic media figures or governors of states and mayors of states, as he has stated, when it comes to Mayor Brandon, the governor of certain states that are Black, as well as Charlemagne the God. That's probably the one that's probably top of my head, all stating that these people have low IQ. Thus, he has no test reports of them scoring low on the IQ test. He doesn't have any reports of them even taking the IQ test. So this morning and this evening, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go over very briefly of IQ, right? And how it pertains to skin color and phenotype, okay? Because we can't just base it off of skin color, because we have Indians, East Indians, with very, very dark skin color who have some of the highest IQs, because they are related to the Mongoloid when it comes to racial categories. The three major racial categories are Caucasoid, Negroid, and Mongoloid, okay? And then the fourth one, I guess by honorary mention, is Australoloid, people from Australia. But nonetheless, and some people say that there is no race, that race is a social construct. We may get into that as well. We may dive into the weeds, but IQ is short for intelligence quotient, okay? And intelligence quotient is a total score derived from a set of standardized tests, I'm here on the right, of subtests designed to assess human intelligence. Originally, IQ was a score obtained by dividing a person's estimated mental age obtained by administering an intelligence test by a person's chronological age, okay? What is the true meaning of IQ? A score on a test that rates the subject's cognitive ability as compared to the general population. Now, the reason why a lot of this is important, because the IQ test was not created by Mongoloid people or Negroid people, people from those Homo sapien groups, from those quote unquote racial categories. It was not created by these groups. Okay, it was created by Caucasoids. Now, an IQ scale is a standardized scoring system for measuring and categorizing an individual intelligence quotient relative to the rest of the population. The scale is designed so that the average score is 100, and the scores of the majority of people fall within a normal range. Now, the IQ bell curve, also known as a normal distribution, it says standard deviation. The standard deviation is typically 15 points. This means about 68% of the people score within one standard deviation of the average, which is between 85 and 115. And wider range, about 95% of people have an IQ between 70 and 130. Okay. And then we're just going to basically, again, just for reference here, I want you guys to see that when you're 130 and above, that is considered extremely high or gifted or a genius. Most people say 132, but 130 and higher roughly gives you a standard baseline of genius, and so on and so forth. And they say the average is between 90 and 109, and low average is 80 and 89. So again, when I hear the president state that people have low IQs, I'm thinking, okay, they must have scored 80 and below, that they scored low average. And again, I've heard him say this to white liberals as well, but lately, within the past month or so, he's been saying this to Black American people, people with high melanin in their skin. Okay, and this is why I'm doing this here this morning, because it's imperative that there's no scientific evidence that links your intelligence to your skin color and phenotype. And the reason why we bring phenotype is because we have people who are Pacific Islanders, okay, people who live on a coastline, who have dark melanated skin, as well as people from East India, people who are from Turkey, some regions of China, some people when they had the Mongoloid and Mongol Empire, like Genghis and Kublai Khan, Asian or Asiatic people had dark melanin skin, by the way. So again, we have to group all of these groups in, because basically they say, oh, because you have dark skin, and or because you're your phenotype, and or because you're Negroid, you have low intelligence. And they're basing this off tests that majority of Black people do not take, for one thing. Okay. And then this test was created by Caucasoids, but we'll get into that as we break this down. Now, not a single measure. IQ tests do not capture the full range of human intellect. A single score cannot represent complex traits like creativity, emotional intelligence, practical skills, or social incompetence. I'm just surprised that, Black Americans, Black people around the world can play instruments, because they're so darn complex. How they can read another language like music notes. Now, I had difficulties when I was in band in high school and I played the trombone. Believe me, I tried to read music notes. I took classes. It didn't click. Okay. It didn't click. But I see people in these marching bands, they're playing very complex tune, sounds. And also, I don't know music terminology, but the point that I'm getting at is that I'm just wondering, does that deal with creativity, or does that deal with intelligence, or is it a matter of all of the above? Now, multiple IQ tests. There is no single official IQ test, and different reputable tests such as the Stanford Binet and Wechsler scales may use different labels for their score range. Now they get into environmental factors. Scores can be influenced by environmental factors, including educational background, socioeconomic status, and cultural biases, which can affect an individual's test performance. A person's motivation and emotional state during tests can also affect their scores. Again, IQ tests are very, very subjective. When you take the test, how you take the test, what school system did you grow up in? Did they, some of the IQ tests that I took had to do with a lot of pattern recognition and correlation, coefficient, and factors, and really comparing and contrasting certain numerical ratios. All these different tests just to test your IQ. Now, would I create an IQ test like that? No. I think I would not create an IQ test like that. But someone can call you low IQ, not even knowing that you took the IQ test and which IQ test that you took, because there are multiple IQ tests. But we all know that this is racial discrimination. They're basically trying to erase Black genius. Because again, if we can basically call all of you guys stupid, then there's no reason why you guys should be alive. Or am I just blowing smoke? Am I just blowing smoke? Because we understand there's a very dark history of the IQ test and those who created it. In 1905, psychologists Alfred Binet and Theodore Osama designed a test for children who were struggling in school in France, designed to determine which children required individualized attention and that their method formed the basis of the modern IQ test. So how do IQ tests work and how they're a true reflection of intelligence? So this test was not created even in America. It was created in France. And this was created for white children, not Asian children, not Black children, not Hispanic children, not Pacific Islander children, but for Caucasoid children. Let's go a little bit deeper here. It states here, and as you can see at the top, historically, certain researchers claim that people from so-called Mongoloid groups scored highest on IQ tests, followed by the Caucasoid groups, and with Negroid groups scoring the lowest. Oh, so Blacks are dumb. Blacks are incompetent. Blacks are stupid because they're from the Negroid group. That means Black Americans, Caribbeans, Africans, and people who have derived from that racial category, from Negroid. These historical claims tied to pseudoscience, racial theories, are now widely rejected by the scientific community, which has debunked the underlying assumptions about race and intelligence. So the scientific community, not the Black scientific community, but the scientific community has debunked this. Neil deGrasse Tyson, where are you at now? Our famous and well-known astrophysicist. What's up with that? That it was created by pseudoscience racial theories based upon your race. That, hey, because you guys got dark skin and small heads, based upon your skin color and phenotypes, you guys have low IQ. Who created IQ tests? Well, Caucasoids. Who they created the test for? Caucasoid, for Caucasians. Did they create it for Black children? Oh, well, no. Did you create it for Mongoloids, for Asian children? Well, no. Okay. Well, there's no excuse here because Mongoloid group scored the highest on IQ tests. So what's your excuse now, Blacklogic? Well, when it comes to India and other Asian countries, with the exception of China, didn't colonial powers colonize India? But they didn't stop the progression of their education systems like they did in Africa, like they did in slavery, like they did in Jim Crow. Educational barriers, educational blockades, educational hurdles that Black groups had to go through, and that was limited because of colonialism and slavery and subjugation that Mongoloid groups did not have to go through. That's a very interesting. We're going to slow walk this just a little bit. Why these historical claims are considered invalid. Numerous critiques and scientific developments over the past century have exposed the deep flaws in earlier research in IQ. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you look right here on the right, some of the resources, you guys, and I'll just show quite a bit of them here. And it says here the flawed concept of race, that the categories Caucasoid, Negro, and Mongoloid are based on outdated 19th century pseudoscience classification system. Okay, racial theories. Modern science considers race a social construct rather than a biological reality, meaning that these groups have no consistent or meaningful genetic basis. And then bias IQ tests. Early IQ tests were developed by eugenics and were culturally biased, often reflecting the knowledge and experience of middle class white people. So we have created a test based on the education and culture of Caucasoids, of Caucasians, of middle class white people. And then we expect for Black people, Asian people, Hispanic people, and all other people to take this test to measure their intelligence. So instead of making the test of intellect, of intelligent people from each racial category, and come up with one standardized general worldwide or even just an American test that all these different groups of people had input on, because we understand how we learn, we understand how we think. So this test can be unified and see how different racial categories, and then put out statistics and evidence of how different groups have scored. Or how about this? Because this first IQ test was created by Caucasoids, by Caucasian people, then let's make one for Negroids. Oh, well, it won't be as complex as the one that they made for Caucasians in France, and how it has expanded and or been altered to fit the American culture. It goes on to state, studies have shown that a person's familiarity with the test's cultural context significantly affects test performance. So based on your culture and how you grow up. In one study, Black Americans scored lower when tested by white individuals than when tested by Black individuals. They scored higher when they were tested by Black individuals. Why is that? So some of the questions you may pose is, did they take the same tests? Did when they were tested by Black individuals, did they test on a curve? So they got their scores to be increased? Or did the Black individuals in the preparation of taking this standardized test train, coach, and educate and tutor them differently than when the white individuals gave them the test? Because certain people all learn differently. Like me, I'm a flashcard guru. I can learn anything if you put it on a flashcard. If you put the answer on one side and you put a keyword on the other side, or a key sentence or a reference or anything, and I would just flash myself to death. But I promise you, I would probably score in the 90 percentile majority of the tests as long as I have index cards. Some people are great with comprehension. They would rather just read it, and they would just read it, 50, 100 times, and they can regurgitate it. But me, I'm short. Flash, give me a keyword, give me a key phrase, give me a context sentence, and I will give you the answer. We all, in some regards, learn different, but certain demographics of people learn and retain information similar than other demographics of people. But believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, how we score on certain tests, even IQ tests, has to do with social economic factors, environmental factors, even nutrition. Like, they went into the weeds about this, ladies and gentlemen. So again, they use these tests to subjugate and to separate and divide of people who are intelligent, people who are less intelligent, and to use racial slurs like, that's a low IQ person. Well, how do you know that? Where did the information you get to? Oh, I combed through their college. Did you get their college test scores? Well, no. You just coming up. So basically, you are defaming and you're slurring that person based upon your own ideology and your stereotypical I guess, viewpoint of that person. Because how do you come to that conclusion? I digress. Let's go a little bit deeper here. And this is coming from the online library.wiley.com. Skin color, a critical and external visible component of human phenotype, exhibits a close relationship between genetic regulation and adaptive environmental evolution. The evolution of skin color has been regulated and shaped by many genes and their interactions, as well as various environmental factors combined with human migrations. So your skin color is based upon where you were born and where you were raised. Interesting. By environmental factors. Because it goes on to state that based on your environmental factors, okay, ultraviolet radiation has played a pivotal role in the evolution of skin color and associated with longitude and latitude. So because majority of our people were born by the equator in hot climates, the sun has fried our brains. I wonder if there's any black geniuses. They tell us that the Arabics, the Arab people built the pyramids, not dark melanated Nubian people. Very interesting. Now, to find the highest IQ score ever recorded is very, very controversial because different IQ tests yield very different results and are not designed to accurately measure extremely high levels of intelligence. And I know you guys heard this guy before, if you ever kind of did any research on IQ tests, stating he had the highest IQ test at 250 to 300. Not even Albert Einstein, not even Thomas Edison. Some of the great minds of our time, supposedly. And this person here, Young Hoon Kim, IQ scored 276 on independent high range tests. So they have a various of different IQ tests that people have scored high on. But no one is talking to the complexity of the different genres and areas that an IQ test may cover and how people have been either trained or raised depending on their educational system or their self-taught nature of how they scoring on these tests. People are not going to school to score high on IQ tests. If you presented an IQ test like SAT or ACT, and that's all you did from the time that you were born, is you just trained on the subjects and categories of the IQ test. Now, of course, this is my opinion. I will believe that over 85% of Negroid people will score very high. And I will even go to say that any people, no matter your race, will score high on IQ tests if that's the only thing that you have been learning since birth. But there will be some racist people to state that it doesn't matter if you were training on it from birth until in adulthood, you will still score low because of your skin color and your phenotype. You guys are just so darn incapable of learning, comprehending, regurgitating, understanding complex information when it comes to math, science, reading, etc. So when I hear the president say low IQ, this is everything that's going through my mind. Where is he getting this information from? Why is he saying low IQ? Why isn't he saying uninformed or may not understand government or politics? Why is he saying low IQ? And if anyone, do not forget President Trump in his early days have been around a lot of Black Americans, especially he was star-studded. We've seen him at parties with P. Diddy, no Diddy. But nonetheless, we see him around all these Black Americans where for a time, he never really showed any discrimination from what I saw and what I looked at, prejudice or racism. And even during his first term, he stated something on stage. He said, "What in the hell do you have to lose?" He said it to a majority all black audience. And he talked how bad the Democrats were treating black folk. And then his base turned. And then when he came up with the slogan, "Make America Great Again," and some of the legislation and executive order he said he was going to pass, and then the Heritage Foundation came out with their manifesto, and then he created Agenda 47, which is slightly different. His base has become more concentrated and more radicalized and more racialized. And now he's using historically racist slurs towards black people like low IQ. That has been debunked by scientific evidence and proof and research. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I can go on and on and on, but I want you guys just to point out some of the things I was stating earlier about intelligence. So we don't score high on tests, so be it. But is intelligence of a people, the intelligence of a people, is it measured by a test or is it measured by what you tangibly do? What you tangibly change? What you tangibly contribute to society and to the world? I'm asking you that question. Because if the only thing that I can do is read and regurgitate information day in and day out, but never produce any tangible results, then what is my intelligence? What is my intelligence worth if the only thing I can do is take tests and score high on? Even though, again, I've already linked that this is absolutely false, that your skin color and phenotype is linked to your intelligence, which it is not. This is another way how eugenics prove that black people on earth should be eradicated and killed. Well, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if black people should never exist, even though we have been proven to be the first people on earth, if we should have never existed and that Caucasian people are a recessive trait of black people, then if we should have never, ever existed, then you know what? We're going to have to take back the traffic light. Now, granted, there was a version of this in England. This will point out the truth. There's truth here on Blacklogic. And again, if you guys are new to Blacklogic, please hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and that like button. Thank you for joining me here. But take back automatic elevator doors. Take back the concept and the idea of voice over internet protocol where you guys can use the internet to call people, and Wi-Fi by Marion Croak. I want you guys to take back the gas masks that we use in SWAT teams, in the military, and all other, and even in our everyday life, some people have gas masks and masks that Gerd Morgan, a black man, a black American, has invented and created. What about Patricia Bath, the laser Phyco Pro for cataract surgery, and the refrigeration machine by Frederick Jones? Take back LASIK eye surgery. Take back all of these things because black Americans have invented these things that has contributed to society and the world. I want you guys to take back the Super Soaker by Lonnie Johnson. Yes, all of the inventions that were made by dark melanated skinned people. And again, I'm just pointing out just some of the achievements of black Americans, even though there's been people from the Caribbean as well as Africa that have contributed and innovated a lot of things. I want you guys to take back the electric guitar. Jimi Hendrix is credited with inventing the electric guitar, a popular instrument. Take it back. No more rock music, no more country music with electric guitars. Take back the guitar altogether because the banjo, the first form of the guitar, was created in Africa. Take it back. Take back country music because black Americans invented country music. Take back hip hop, R&B, blues, jazz. Take it all back, because Black people should have never existed, even though we were the first people. I just want you guys to take it back. Dr. Patricia Babb developed laser FICO probe, a laser device that precisely breaks up and removes cataracts, making eye surgery less invasive and more effective. Take it back. No more inventions for you guys. For the low IQ people, we can't have no great achievements. Take back Dr. Mark E. Dean, who created a gigabyte chip for IBM. Take it back. John Henry Thompson. He is the mind behind lingo programming, a scriptural language designed to render visuals within computer programs. Take it back. No more computers. Take it back. Can't have it. Black person made it. You got to make it yourself with no evidence, with no information. We have to retract and delete and eradicate all information that surrounds the great achievements of these Black Americans and to technology. Take it back. Lewis Latimer, okay, because Thomas Edison was not an inventor, he was a businessman, but Lewis Latimer, the son of a fugitive slave with no education, yet rose to become one of the most recognized Black inventors of the 19th century. Lewis' most prominent work stems from his tenure with Thomas Edison's lab in 1884, where he created the filament, the carbon filament that sustained the light in the light bulb. That's why he gets credit for the light bulb. Take it back. You'll live in darkness for the rest of your days, or you just burn lanterns. Take it back. Dr. Shirley Jackson, a physicist and the former head of the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission. She is one of the first Black American women to earn a PhD in physics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Take her back and her achievements, because she had contributed significantly to telecommunications, the creation of the touch tone phone, as well as fiber optics cable. Nope, no more fast internet for you. Take it back. Since we're so low IQ, white supremacists and those with white ideology who may not have white skin, and granted, this is not to all white people. All white people don't think like this. There's a lot of white people who understand the contributions of Black Americans and Black people from around the world. I'm not talking to you guys. Not talking to you. Thank you for your recognition, by the way. I'm talking about those left, right, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, independent, doesn't matter. The Reform Party, the Green Party, the Pink Party, whatever. Take it all back. You can't have any information. Anything that revolves around is, well, we would just invented it anyway. Good luck. If you would have invented it anyway, then why did you wait till we invented it first? Take it back. The New York-born Black inventor is a leader in holograph, most well known for his invention of three-dimensional viewing glasses. How do you think we have all this technology in glasses? Take it back. Kenneth J. Dunkley. These are lies. This pseudoscience. They're just making up Black people that did all these great things. How can they do that? They got small heads and low IQs. Take it back. I just want them to take it back. What about this brother here, Otis Boykin, for over 25 inventions, many of which solve problems with guidance systems and electrical components of companies such as IBM, Philips, and Motorola? Take it back. You cannot have it. You cannot have our intellectual property. You can't have our intelligence that has not been scored on an IQ test, the creativity. Take it back. Because without Otis Boykins, you can't have missile guided systems, because he's the one who created the technology. We got to take it back. Now you just got to drop bombs indiscriminately and just destroy and kill all sorts of innocent people. You can't have any information related to it that surrounds it by any chance. No, take it back, delete it, eradicate it, abolish it. You cannot have it because this is Black genius. Because this myth has lived too long. The idea that skin color, phenotype, or race determines intelligence, creativity, innovation, or the ability to explore the world is not just bad science, it's deliberate propaganda. White supremacy has tried to change genius to phenotype, to argue that melanin makes you less capable of thinking, inventing, and building. But the truth, Black people are the original blueprint. Civilization itself was born from Black ingenuity. No, we don't want to talk about that. Oh no. No, 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 no. They're trying to erase our Black genius. And as a disclaimer for those who are in the back, those who wear the helmets, whether you Mongoloid, Caucasoid, Negroid, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific, and Islander, doesn't matter. All people are intelligent. All people have contributed to their societies. All people have contributed to the world. But this is a myth that's being debunked and has been debunked, that your skin color and phenotype is related and connected to your intelligence. You can't have it. The Great Pyramids aligned to the stars with precision modern science still struggles to replicate. They were designed by Black engineers. That is intelligence. Oh, it was the Arabs. Prove it. Because we have nothing but proof of the pyramids and the depiction of those Nubian people inside of it. Long before Europe's so-called Renaissance, Mali's Timbuktu University had libraries with over 700,000 manuscripts on science, law, and astronomy. While Europe was in the Dark Ages, Black scholars were categorizing and cataloging the stars. They were telling time way before Europeans, by the way. Am I saying this to state that Black people are smarter than Europeans or people who derive in Caucasoid? Absolutely not. I'm displaying the intelligence of Black people because America doesn't like to admit it, but its backbone was built on Black American innovation. And I named some people already. We're talking about Gerrit Morgan, Madam C.J. Walker, Granville Woods, who was also nicknamed the Black Edison, who held over 60 patents in telegraphy, electricity, and railroads. Dr. Patricia Bath, we talked about the pioneer for the laser and cataracts. Mark Dean co-invented the IBM personal computer. Take it back, because without him, the computer was never been made. Now, according to the U.S. Patent Office during Reconstruction between 1865 and 1899, Black inventors filed hundreds of patents. Despite systematic barriers, many of our inventions and innovations were stolen, erased, or rebranded under white names. Because during that time, by the continuous propaganda narrative of us being unintelligent and low IQ and stupid and incapable of learning. And this is why they didn't want us to learn how to read, by the way. If someone's incapable of reading, comprehending, understanding, and they have low intelligence, why stop them from reading? Why stop them from learning? It's a waste of time. You can't do it anyway. How do you know that? Oh, well, your skin color's dark. Oh, because my skin color is dark, that's how you come to your conclusion that we're incapable of learning and being intelligent. Whoa. What about Neil deGrasse Tyson? Oh, he's a DEI hire. He was? What about the hidden figures who came up with the complicated algorithms for our people to go into space? Oh, DEI, affirmative action. But we have reports from the US government that is majority white that DEI and affirmative action majority help and support white women and white people. Oh, lies. That's liberal lies. The reason why I intertwine some of the things I state with politics is because they are intertwined. They use this as a foundation to propagate and propagandize low intelligence of melanated dark people, foundational Black Americans. And what people do not understand, no matter where Black people are in the world, we have always learned to adapt and shape culture. Now, in the Americas, Black American ancestors preserve some of their indigenous traditions as well as some of their African traditions while also mastering English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, even under duress. That's linguistic geniuses, by the way. When we refer to jazz, blues, hip hop, art forms born from Black struggle and country, there are now global languages. When we hear, see, or feel the world, we interpret it not just intelligently, but creatively, transforming survival into culture. I think it's only right if we tackle the pseudoscience of it all, as we stated before, because in the 20th century, eugenics like Charles Murray, in reference to the bell curve, claimed that Black people score lower on IQ tests. But again, as we've been debunking the myth and the lies, IQ tests measure exposure, environment, and access, not genetic intelligence. It has nothing to do with your genetics or your predisposition of your genetics. There was a Harvard geneticist, Richard, was it Lewitton? I believe that's his name, or in some regards. He proved that in 1970, that variations within so-called races is greater than between races. So, in other words, there's more genetic diversity among Africans, Black people, than the rest of the world combined. There's more genetic diversity. Now, and the American Psychological Association has since admitted that IQ is shaped by education, nutrition, poverty, and social access, not phenotype. And some would say this is just excuses to say why Black people in America have low IQs, even though majority of Black Americans have not taken any sort of IQ tests. Let's be very clear. Skin color doesn't determine genius. Phenotype doesn't limit innovation. Every time white supremacy says that Black people can't, history shows we've already did, not just in sports, not just in music, but in technology, engineering, and math. We built the pyramids. We mapped the stars. We built telephones, created telephones, and automatic this and automatic that. Mr. Emmett McHenry created the internet. Patricia Bath, laser eye surgery. We invented modern day technology. We crossed the oceans. The indigenous people of America were Black people. The native people of America were Asiatic Mongoloid people. We reshaped art and music and science. You see the creativity and innovation in that, of these so-called low intelligent people? This is just a challenge for people to do their research and not just listen to influencers who don't provide any context, evidence, or information. So the real question isn't whether Black people can achieve, it's why the system works so hard to erase our receipts. This is the reason why they're trying to eradicate and erase Black history. They don't want the world to know the true achievements of Black Americans, let alone Black people around the world.